Segment 1. The Buffalo Bills versus Houston Oilers. The comeback 1993 wild card. They called it the comeback, but to the Buffalo Bills, it was survival. January 3rd, 1993. The Houston Oilers came into Orchard Park with one of the league's deadliest passing attacks. By halftime, it wasn't a game. It was a burial. 35-3. The Bills were humiliated, the crowd silent, and backup quarterback Frank Reich, a man few outside Buffalo even knew, was left to face the wreckage. No one believed, not the fans, not the commentators, maybe not even the players. But Reich had been here before, in college at Maryland, where he'd engineered the biggest comeback in NCAA history. Now, with a playoff life hanging by a thread, he started building another. Early in the third quarter, Reich dropped back and found Don Beebe streaking down the sideline. One strike, one spark. Buffalo finally had life. Next drive, Reich hit Andre Reed on a crossing route. Perfect timing, 38-17. The crowd started to rise again. Moments later, Reed again. Slant, broken tackle, gone. Suddenly it was 38-24, and belief flooded back into the building. The Oilers panicked. The Bills didn't. Reich stayed calm, scanning, firing. Reed's third touchdown cut it to 7. Then, chaos. A tipped pass, a diving grab by Kenneth Davis, touchdown, tie game, 5 drives, 5 touchdowns. What began as a funeral had become a resurrection. By the time the fourth quarter arrived, a dead stadium was roaring again. Every fan on their feet, every doubt erased. Overtime, a field goal. Final, Bills 41, Oilers 38, the largest comeback in NFL playoff history. The game that turned a backup into a legend. And the moment that defined what resilience looked like under impossible odds. The Bills went on to another Super Bowl run. The Oilers never recovered. That game haunted them, fractured their locker room, and became their eulogy. But for Buffalo, it wasn't just a win. It was proof that belief, no matter how faint, can still echo louder than defeat. This wasn't luck, it was faith under fire. Segment 2, John Elway's The Drive, Broncos vs. Browns, 1987 AFC Championship. Travel back to Cleveland, January 11, 1987. The Denver Broncos were 98 yards from the end zone, and from heartbreak. The crowd at Municipal Stadium was deafening. The Cleveland Browns led 20-13 with 5 minutes left, and all they had to do was keep John Elway out of the end zone. Then came the drive. Elway started at his own 2-yard line, the dog pound shaking the earth behind him. First snap, quick out to Sammy Winder, just enough to breathe. Second, a dart to Steve Watson, chains move, clock running. Each completion chipped away at the noise. Each throw felt heavier, louder, more inevitable. Elway rolled right, dodged a blitz, fired 30 yards on a rope to Mark Jackson. First down, midfield. The Browns' defense bent, and Denver's sideline came alive. 2 more completions, a scramble, a penalty, 60 seconds left. The ball rested on Cleveland's 5-yard line. Then, the moment. Elway dropped back, surveyed, and zipped it to Mark Jackson in the back of the end zone. Touchdown, tie game, silence in Cleveland. In overtime, Rich Karlis drilled the winner. Broncos 23, Browns 20. That 98-yard march became legend. The drive, the standard for clutch, for calm, for command. It crushed a city but crowned a quarterback. For Cleveland, it was agony reborn every January. For Denver, it was the birth of belief. The moment Elway stopped being potential and became inevitable. This wasn't just a drive, it was destiny written in 98 yards. You've seen the miracles, the drives, and the impossible finishes, but the next story hits different. It's not about one game, it's about one man's final stand. A legend with nothing left to prove and nothing left to give except one last win. Wait for the end. Because this last comeback didn't just change a season, it ended a career in triumph. Segment 3, Patriots vs. Falcons, the 28-3 resurrection, Super Bowl LI 2017. If you don't recall, it was Houston, February 5, 2017. The Atlanta Falcons were 22 minutes away from immortality. Up 28-3 on Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, they'd ripped through one of the best defenses in football. The stadium smelled like inevitability, a coronation waiting to happen. Then everything changed. Late in the third quarter, Brady found James White out of the backfield. Touchdown, small spark. Then a defensive stop, then another. Momentum, invisible but real, shifted like gravity, flipping sides. Brady came alive. No panic, no flash, just precision. He hit Danny Amendola, then Chris Hogan, dissecting the Falcons 1 yard at a time. White punched in another score, 28-12. Then the play that rewrote the night. Julian Edelman's miracle catch, inches from the turf. 3 defenders surrounding him, football still somehow in his hands. You could feel Atlanta's confidence crack. Brady never looked back. Amendola, 2-point conversion, White touchdown. Brady, perfection, 28-28. Overtime, the first in Super Bowl history. New England won the toss, and you already knew the rest. Brady to White, touchdown. Final, Patriots 34, Falcons 28. The greatest comeback the Super Bowl had ever seen. The game that turned a dynasty into a monument. In that fourth quarter, Brady threw for 246 yards, more than most quarterbacks in a full game. The Falcons never recovered. The phrase 28-3 became a scar. But for the Patriots, for Brady, it was transcendence. They didn't just win a championship, they defied mathematics, logic, and doubt, all in one half of football. This wasn't a comeback, it was a resurrection. Segment 4. Alex Smith's return from catastrophic injury, 2020. Hit the like button if you remember November 18, 2018. Alex Smith, quarterback for the Washington Commanders, dropped back to pass. A routine play that became a nightmare. A blindside rush, a high hit, a collapse. When he hit the turf, his leg snapped. Spiral fracture, tibia, and fibula. You could hear it before you saw it. Doctors called it life-altering. What they didn't know was how literal that would be. 17 surgeries, flesh-eating infection, a medical team fighting to save his leg, and sometimes his life. No one thought he'd walk again, let alone play football. But Alex Smith didn't want a miracle. He wanted normal. And then he wanted more. For nearly 2 years, he rebuilt himself. Muscle by muscle, step by painful step. He learned how to walk with a titanium rod inside his leg, then how to run, then how to throw. Quietly, slowly, defiantly. Then came October 11th, 2020. Smith ran onto the field against the Los Angeles Rams, first snap in 693 days. The crowd was small, COVID-era silent, but the moment felt enormous. Aaron Donald sacked him almost instantly, landed full weight on that reconstructed leg, and Smith stood up. The stadium erupted. Even Donald nodded. He finished the game, he finished the season, and he finished the story no one thought possible. He wasn't the fastest anymore, he wasn't the strongest. But he'd done something rarer. He'd made courage visible. Alex Smith didn't win a Super Bowl. He didn't need to, he won his life back. This wasn't about football, it was about the will to live and the strength to return anyway. Segment 5. The Monday Night Miracle, Jets vs. Dolphins, 2000. Let's go back to October 23, 2000. The New York Jets were finished. At least, that's what everyone thought. Down 30-7 to the Miami Dolphins entering the fourth quarter on Monday Night Football. Fans poured out of Giants Stadium. Even the broadcasters called it over. But the NFL's best stories start where reason ends. Quarterback Vinny Testaverde, a 37-year-old journeyman, took the huddle and refused to let the night die. He started throwing quick outs, slants, seams, anything that kept the chains moving. Lavernews Coles, Wayne Krebet, Jumbo Elliott, the left tackle turned legend. The first touchdown felt like noise. The second brought a murmur. By the third, the stadium started to believe again. Every pass carried defiance. Every drive turned disbelief into hysteria. Then came the impossible. Down 37-30 with less than a minute left, Testaverde rolled right and fired into the end zone. Jumbo Elliott, the 300-pound lineman, diving, catching, holding on. Touchdown, tie game. The crowd didn't roar, it detonated. Overtime. The Dolphins, stunned, stumbled. The Jets forced a turnover, lined up, and kicked the winner. Final, Jets 40, Dolphins 37. The greatest Monday night comeback in NFL history. 6 touchdowns in 15 minutes. A franchise that had lived in heartbreak got its miracle. For one quarter, belief became contagious. It swept through a team, a city, a nation watching live. And when it ended, even the Dolphins couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. This wasn't a comeback, it was chaos baptized in green and white. Wait for N for the biggest comeback that will bring you back to a day you can feel still to this day. Segment 6. The Vikings' 33-point miracle, 2022. The silence was brutal, the kind that makes every footstep echo. Players stared at the turf, fans at the exits. The Minnesota Vikings weren't just losing, they were being humiliated. 33-0. A scoreboard that felt like an obituary. Then the first spark, KJ Osborne, crossing route, touchdown. No celebration, just a quick nod and a jog back to the huddle. One heartbeat. Then Justin Jefferson, smooth, ruthless, unstoppable, toe-tapping the sideline for 6 more. The crowd twitched awake. Dalvin Cook exploded through the line. Touchdown. Now the noise had a pulse. Purple thunder rolling through a building that had been a morgue an hour earlier. The Indianapolis Colts unraveled in real time. Penalties, turnovers, panic. Kirk Cousins stayed steady, carving up the field like he'd been waiting for this moment his entire career. Another strike, another roar. Overtime felt inevitable. Cousins hit Adam Thielen, then Osborne again, then Cook in the flat, 3 seconds left. Greg Joseph stepped up, snap, hold, kick, good. Final, Vikings 39, Colts 36, the largest comeback in NFL history. For once, Cousins wasn't the punchline, he was the pulse. And the Vikings proved that belief doesn't need a clock, it just needs a chance. This wasn't a rally, it was resurrection in real time. Segment 7, Steve Young and the 49ers vs. Saints, 1987. By the late 1980s, the San Francisco 49ers lived under a kind of perfection. Joe Montana's teams didn't just win, they made it look effortless. Behind him, Steve Young waited, brilliant, restless, and desperate for a moment that finally belonged to him. That chance came in New Orleans. The Saints' defense had mauled the 49ers all afternoon, turning one of the NFL's smoothest offenses into confusion and frustration. Late in the fourth quarter, San Francisco trailed, the pocket collapsing again, the noise inside the Superdome shaking the turf. Then Young saw daylight. He stepped left, spun out of a sack, and ran. Not gracefully, violently, like a man trying to outrun every doubt that had ever followed him. 49 yards later, he stumbled into the end zone, helmet crooked, arms flung wide, face tilted to the lights. For a heartbeat, he stood there, half laughing, half in disbelief, while his teammates sprinted to him. That run didn't win a championship, but it changed something deeper. It was the moment the franchise stopped seeing Steve Young as the man behind Montana and started seeing him as the next one. He'd carried a team, a legacy, and every ounce of pressure into that end zone. When he fell across the line, the 49ers found their future. It wasn't a perfect play. It was proof that heart could finish what precision began. Segment 8. Peyton Manning's Final Redemption. Super Bowl 50, 2016. By February 2016, the man who once made football look effortless could barely throw a spiral. Peyton Manning was 40 years old, stitched together by surgeries and memory, his arm a ghost of what it had been. The Denver Broncos had carried him here on defense and grit. Not numbers, not records. He knew it, the world knew it, but he also knew this was the last snap of his life that would matter. Across the field stood Cam Newton, the new prototype, young, strong, untouched by failure. The game looked like a passing of the torch. Instead, it became a reminder that experience doesn't need velocity to leave a mark. Manning didn't light up the scoreboard. He managed the storm. He let Von Miller and that defense suffocate Carolina, while he held the huddle together with his voice. Calm, steady, commanding. Every first down felt like a small act of defiance against time itself. When the clock hit 0, the scoreboard read 24-10, Broncos. Manning raised his helmet, walked off the field, and exhaled like a man setting down a lifetime's weight. No fireworks, no theatrics, just peace. He retired weeks later, leaving behind 5 MVPs, 2 rings, and an entire generation that measured quarterbacks by his precision. But this final win wasn't about numbers. It was about the way he endured, the way he let grace replace greatness. For one last night, the game slowed down long enough for Peyton Manning to finish it on his terms, not with power, but with poise. If you want more stories of NFL greatness and collapse, hit subscribe, drop a like, and stick around. The next chapter of football history is already waiting.